Greetings, Honorable Minister, Professor Nzimande. Let me greet Deputy Minister, Dr. Nomalungelo Gina, the DG of the Department of Science, Technology and Innovation, Dr. Mulungisi Kele. I am informed that there are members of the PPC on Science, Technology and Innovation. Let me greet you as well. Our host, the CEO of HSRC, Professor Musweza, and all the colleagues from HSRC, CEOs of various entities, the leadership of the NRF present here, leadership and the representatives from the various universities, distinguished guests from the local platforms and internationally, colleagues and friends, good morning to you all. It is really an honor to give you these brief opening remarks in this session on engaged research in the Global South in the 21st century. In our context, which is the context of deep talent and deep inequality, context of extraordinary scientific promise and persistent structural constraints, how we do research matters as much as what research we do. In the Global South, the question is no longer whether science matters, but how it matters, to whom, and with what change. But change has become a constant. Colleagues, I want to say today, engaged research is our answer. The NRF defines engaged research as a research that integrates considered approaches to engage communities and society across the full research cycle, so that communities are primarily stakeholders. They become active contributors and beneficiaries of the work. In other words, we must move from research on people to research with the people, and ultimately, research for the people, by the people. That's pretty much what we need to do. To deliver on these, there are three shifts that are non-negotiable, and I'll just go through them very quickly. The first one is the movement from extraction to co-creation, something that was covered fully by the CEO of HSRC. Communities must shape the questions, they must shape the methods, they must be involved in the data and the outcomes. The co-creation and participatory approaches are no longer nice to have. They are the difference between thin consultation and the shared ownership. No engagement plan without an engagement budget, no data collection without data stewardship, no authorship without authorship justice. This is the world that we need to face. Second, we need to move from outputs to outcomes. Excellence does not end at the publication. I know as academics, we've been focusing on the publications. It includes policy influences, it includes practice change, it includes a capability built in communities, and that requires knowledge brokering and research translation. Policy briefs that are timely, toolkits that are usable, fellows that are embedded in the departments and in the municipalities, and feedback loops that reach classrooms, clinics, and councils. That is what we require, colleagues. Third and last, we want to move from open by default to open and ethical by design. Ethical by design. The digital age expands research, but it also risks harm. We must pair fair data with dignity, in particular, privacy, consent, data sovereignty, among others. When we use the low bandwidth, we need to be careful of access, we need to look into the multilingual tools, we need to be able to adopt federated or systemic data sets, and apply care principles for indigenous and local data. Digital should not widen participation. Digital should widen participation. It should not deepen the divides, as we have seen in the past. So just very quickly, Minister, I want to just give you a short brief of how we began with this program with HSRC. And this started in the year 2022, when we signed a very small agreement between NRF and HSRC with a 5-year grant of about 15 million rands to catalyze engaged research across the NSI. And during the time, we set 5 priorities. I won't go through all of them in detail, but one of them was about surfacing and synthesizing insight from the local engaged research champions. 2, to grow awareness and the participation with a shared knowledge base. 3, to accelerate peer learning through the convenings and transfer and practice through the mobility via the funded secondments and the peer support. And lastly, convert knowledge into programs by scoping new projects and scaling the proven collaborations. This is what we did 2022. When you look at where we are now, you can actually see the results of your entities, Minister, working together. That things then start happening, things move in a particular way. And we still have clear aspiration that by the year 2027, we aim for a coordinated, credible, and impactful engaged research portfolio, which will have a joint framing of engaged research used across the system that responds directly to South Africa's social, economic, and developmental priorities. Very briefly, what does a credible engagement look like in practice? And I won't get into the details, I want to move to conclusion. But we want to look into the impactful community practices where we can actually have multi-layer, reciprocal, with clear MOUs on the roles, where we can engage with the communities on issues of data, of IP, and benefit sharing. Because communities have to be part of the research that is done. No longer just end user where we sit as scientists elsewhere and we say, we have technology for you. How do we bring them on board from the beginning? This is what this project talks to. Secondly, policy and engaged research, where we talk of the evidence sprints for decision windows and policy labs that turn results into options that translates who speak both science and policy, but making sure that those voices are heard across the system. And of course, having engaged research for justice. Professor Musweza, you struggle with epistemic justice, I think it's a critical component in terms of engaged research for justice, where again, social justice and equity become the core of what we do. And then of course, I spoke of ethics, ethical and inclusive research, where we treat ethics as a continuous conversation, not just a single signature when you are submitting your proposal to the university and you have to just put a signature at the end. How do we make sure that it's fully embedded? And of course, measuring what matters. The key component, as I move to the conclusion, is that if we change practice, we need to change incentives. And this actually means the funders, the universities, the science councils should reward engagement and impact in promotions, in the grants, and in the awards. And yes, we need to pay for participation, for translation, for facilitation, and community data stewardship. So I want to leave you with just 5 key points here, which are about what I will call the impact for the Global South. The first one is the co-creation, co-ownership, and the co-benefit, where we say from the agenda setting to the authorship and IP discussion, community must be involved. That's number one. Number 2, I spoke of the digital space, but digital with dignity is very important. How do we deal with rights? How do we deal with respecting the communities themselves, being inclusive and being accessible? Thirdly, brokering the last mile, where we have to invest in the translation roles and policy labs from evidence to action, because people want to see the results of what we do. Fourthly, we need to measure what matters. But if you look carefully at what matters, at the core is the impact of the science on people's lives. That's a very difficult thing to measure, but we need to move to that particular space where we can say, how do we measure how this particular science, in whatever form, social sciences, humanities, engineering, mathematics, it matters not. How is it changing people's lives? And that's the key component. And lastly, we need to sustain the partnerships beyond just the granting cycles, where we can say our engagement with the community has to last long. Let's make sure that communities are part of the ecosystem of doing research. And if we do this, Deputy Minister, engaged research will not be a side program. It will be how we do science, which is credible, which is inclusive, and most importantly, which is transformative. So, colleagues, it is fitting that this morning we will hear from our minister, who has always been a champion for engaged scholarship, and he will illuminate on the national and the continental component further as we proceed. I really thank you, and I wish you all the best during this conference.